And I specifically, I was working with the Bureau of Sea Run Fisheries, so I was looking at Atlantic salmon and alewives, kind of see how they move from sea into freshwater. From there, I went to work as a fisheries observer. So I was going out with commercial fishermen. I was getting to know how fishing gear worked, how the fishing operations worked on deck, and I was taking data at sea to see kind of what fish were being caught, what fish were being thrown over, and really kind of grew my love for the fisheries. And then after that, I ended up getting a position here at the Gulf of Maine Research Institute about 10 years ago, working with the fishing industry and also conducting kind of my own fishery surveys. You can see me here working with a beach seine, and that's one of the ways that we're actually catching fish, and we do actually count them as well. So we can kind of understand what's going on in our own backyard. So I kind of want to start off with a little bit more of an interactive portion of this talk. Um, and I was trying to see if I can see the chat and I can't. So Melanie, if
That's
you
all
don't
right.
mind helping me out, feel free to put whatever you want in the chat. I'm going to give you a kind of a pop quiz on the different fish that are swimming in the Gulf of Maine. So the first one, this is a very popular one. Anybody know what fish I'm holding here?
Cod. We have a cod.
Yep,
Nice.
nice. Right off the bat, you get a nice nail it on the first try. It's amazing. This is a cod. This is the Atlantic cod. This is what Cape Cod's named after. This is what a lot of fishing gear is named after. You had a cod end because where all the cod end up. So this is kind of a staple of fishing in this area. What about this one? You can see that the bottom of it, this you're looking at the bottom here, and it
I got
doesn't have any
two.
eyes.
I got two flounders and one halibut.
Nice. You guys are really on point. This is a halibut, very close to a flounder. But these get very, very large. I've never seen a flounder this big, but Atlantic halibut routinely get this large and even bigger. They're always fun to handle and they're very, very powerful fish. Very cool. So Atlantic halibut. What about
That's
this one?
important. Got a guess for flounder.
Yeah,
Nice.
you guys are nailing this. This is an American place flounder. There are many different types of flounders that live in the Gulf of Maine. This is just one of the species. I'm going to show you a couple other ones, but you can tell it's an American place flounder, also known as a dab, by this large mouth, as well as the kind of sandy dab coloring. What about this one?
Got no guesses yet. Oh no, we
I
might have stumped them.
think they're trying to get specific about
Oh,
what.
olive flounder. How about
Okay,
that?
nice. This one is actually a winter flounder. And so a winter flounder, you can tell it's a winter flounder. Actually, it's a lot thicker of a body, as well as has a smaller mouth to eat more worms, and has more of a speckled pattern. I'll give you one more flounder just for fun. So I've already given away that it's flounder, but it's kind of the body shape and type of fish. If I were to flip this over, you would see a nice yellow streak at the tail.
Got another guess for olive flounder. Anybody else? Ooh, yellowfin flounder. Then I got a
Nice.
dabs.
And dabs. Dabs is actually American place. A very good guess. And you can tell it's different from American place because it has a much smaller mouth and it's got a speckled pattern here that is different from the dab. So this is a yellowtail flounder. So yellowfin is very, very close. I'll accept it. It's right there. Um, what about this one? Let's get away from the flounders a little bit. Pollock,
Beak
good
says
guess.
pollock. Yeah. Got another guess of pollock.
Pollock. This is actually a haddock. Very,
Oh,
very similar to a pollock. Pollock would be a little more silvery. a little more bluish tint. And the dead giveaway that it is a haddock is based on this. It's called the thumbprint of God. So it looks like if you're gonna grab the haddock, it's got a nice little thumbprint there, and all of them have it. There's also squid in that picture too, but I was really only looking for the haddock. All right, so now that we know the different types of fish that live in the Gulf of Maine, by the way, there's a lot more. I just kind of touched the surface of them. What are the way to catch them? So, what does anybody think this is?
Gill
Yep.
netting.
Yeah,
Net fishing.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. So a gill net. So you have this net that goes onto the bottom of the ocean floor. It has anchors on either side to hold it down. And then what happens is the fish go swim through, and if they're big enough, they will get caught by the gills and they can be harvested that way. What about this one? Long line trolling. I think we got a lot of
Good
fishing
chat
community.
now. I'm gonna click myself up, so I'm not
Yeah.
messing it up.
Sorry, I figured out how to do it. Yeah, this is a bottom long line, also known as trawling, or but yeah, it's a bottom long line. People were not very inventive when they were coming up with names. This is basically a long line that sits on the bottom and it has hooks on each end, on each of the lines. Gonna move on to another one. Anybody know what this is? Net fishing, V-net. This one is actually a bottom trawl, or it's a bottom otter trawl, technically. There's many different types and variations on this. There's a lot of different ways that you can manipulate it, but it's a bottom trawl, or it's also known as a dragger. What about this one? Yeah, pole angling, rod and reel. Yes, exactly. This is a rod and reel. This is the most common way of fishing for a lot of people, easily accessible. And this is actually how we do some of our surveys out in Casco Bay. It's just by a rod and reel. Also, I think one of the more fun ways to catch them personally. All right. So seems like you guys know what a lot of these different gears are, but I wanted to show what a bottom trawl looks like. So here's just a little video showing what it looks like from a vessel. This is a commercial fishing vessel that we were doing research on. And so you can kind of see the net being pulled up here. There's a foot rope that's along the bottom, along the sea floor, and the head rope up top here. Just wanted to kind of give you a scale of how kind of big the nets are for a vessel. And so the fish will swim through here. This is kind of the body of the net, and they'll swim down towards what's called the cod end, and it's named that way because that's where all the cod end up. And then it's kind of cinched off there with a rope that will get kind of opened up. This blue right here is actually called a chafing gear. And so that way, a fisherman isn't kind of hurting its net on the bottom of the ocean, on the bottom of the seafloor. It provides a buffer between the seafloor and the actual cod end. So you're not spending all your time mending nets. So what the fisherman's going to do here is he's going to pull that rope and it's going to open up the bottom. Then all of that fish, all the fish that were caught in that tow kind of spill out. And since these are just research trips, they're actually only about an hour tow. So it's about a third or a fourth of the fish, depending on what the commercial fishermen actually go for. So that's just kind of how a bottom trawl works. So how do we then only catch what we want? So we're going to use the morphology of the fish. So how is that fish shaped? Are they a round fish like the cod and haddock, or are they a flat fish like the flounder? And so if it's a round fish and the very end of the net is in a square, it allows that fish to get out a lot easier than if the cod end is shaped with a diamond, which a diamond is easier for a flat fish to get out, but it doesn't allow for the round fish to get out. What size ranges are there? So right now there's legal limits on what you can use for a mesh size for nets. And so that will depend on if the fish is small enough, they'll just swim right through. It's just another hole. That's fine. But if it's big enough, if the fish is big enough, it'll end up getting captured. And then for the physiology, like how do they function? Do the fish have an air bladder? So we have different tools that we can use, basically fancy fish finders that are sending sound down into the water. And if the fish have an air bladder, it responds differently than if a fish doesn't. So we can kind of tell what fish are down there based on their physiology. What temperature do those fish need to live? What depths do they live at, and when are they mature? And so all of these things kind of amount to how should we actually harvest them if are we going to wait until they're mature and are able to provide offspring to kind of repopulate what we're taking out of the ocean. So we should do so. It's a very important thing to know about. And then behavior is kind of where I kind of come in, and this is how a fish acts. And so how close to the bottom do they live? So if you're thinking of the Gulf of Maine, what happens is that these fish are actually they're stratifying, they're layering themselves on top of each other. And so at the very bottom on the seafloor, you have your flatfish and your monkfish, and then about 2 to 3 feet above that, you'll have your cod, and they're just kind of hovering around there. And then 2 to 3 feet kind of above that, you have your haddock, and so they want to live a little higher than the cod do, and then even higher, you have your pollock. And so what that is they're just kind of they like to be in the high ground and they just want to see what's going on. They don't come down and eat as much. They'll end up eating more fish than they do crabs. So we can take advantage of how close to the bottom they're living in order to modify your gear to catch them and avoid the other ones. What type of bottom do they prefer? Do they live on gravel? Do they live in sand? Do they live in mud? Do they like boulders? These are all things to take in consideration when you're thinking about how to catch and how to count these different fish. And then how do they react to different gear types? Do they swim up? Do they swim down? What's their stamina level? Will they just keep swimming or will they just dive down and hunker? These are all important things to think about when you're trying to modify fishing gear. So right now, the problem in the Gulf of Maine is Atlantic cod are at an all-time low abundance. These cod, which were a staple for the industry, are now caught as bycatch with normal fishing gear. And this fishing gear has been modified over years and years and decades and centuries to catch these fish. And now what we're trying to do is make it so they don't, and so they can avoid these fish and catch other species that are sustainable. So if the fishermen catch too many of these cod, they'll be forced to stop fishing, even if there are other fish around that are more sustainable, just because it means they can run into these cod and lower that population even more. So we have to figure out a fishing gear, or the fishermen have to change their behavior in order to keep that populations to rebuild that cod population. So here are some of the possible solutions to that problem. So we can use the differences in their morphology, physiology, and behavior of cod to modify existing gear, and then the fishermen can also change their behavior. They can change their behavior as well. And we can fish at different depths in areas that have higher amounts of cod. Actually, they would have lower because we don't want to catch them. So sorry for that typo, but they'll have lower amounts of cod. So we could fish at those different depths, knowing that the cod want to move out to get into a different depth range or temperature. Well, you can use a square mesh in the cod end, and this allows the cod to escape and keeps the flounders. You can also look at their behavior. And so cod, what they do is they tend to swim up higher in the water than flounders do, but not as high as something as like a haddock will. So we can use tie downs for gill nets. So if you're thinking about a gill net, you're thinking you have a panel that's just on the seafloor, a tie down, basically makes that into a big, shorter U. And so that's just lowering the amount of net in the water. And that's going to catch, you're going to catch more flounders, and you'll have more flounders and monkfish, and you'll avoid those cod. And then we have the ultra low opening trawl, which we helped design at GMRI. So what this does is a normal bottom trawl will open from the seafloor until about 10 to 12 feet. What we did is we actually shrunk that down to about 2 to 3 feet. So what is happening is it's fishing from the seafloor to the 2 to 3 feet, and it's taking advantage of that stratification that the cod are doing, or that layering. And so what's happening is the cod see the net coming and they just swim over it by a little bit. And you still catch all the flounders, and we avoided about 45% of the cod from our catches, and we retained the same amount of flounders as a normal net. And in a lot of cases, we actually increased the amount of flounders, which is a sustainable fish to catch. So it allowed fishermen to continue to make a living. Another one is if you're looking at trying to split up haddock and cod. So haddock will tend to swim up higher in the water than cod do. And so this is an example of a net modification that you can do for haddock. And this is called a haddock separator. If you look in here in the middle, there's this panel. And what happens is everything above this panel keeps swimming into the cod end. Everything below this panel swims out into open ocean. It's totally open at the bottom. And so it's not capturing any of those fish. So it's separating the haddock and the cod. And if you're not worried about catching flounders, it'll separate the flounders as well. Another one is an off bottom trawl. This one is actually designed so that you're not touching the bottom at all. And what you can do is, or what you can imagine is now where that panel is, that's the bottom of your net, and you're not even touching the seafloor. And that's good for areas that if you don't want to disturb any of the seafloor, you can try to use it there. Once again, you're not going to catch any of those flatfish. And then we have an automatic jigging machine. And what this does is you can actually set how far down it goes, and you can set the different thresholds for it. And this works really well if you're doing more of a small scale fishing. And it works really well for pollock versus cod. So if you want to target pollock, you can put an automatic jig machine on, and there's been some fishermen that have had really good success with that solution. So another kind of possible solution is when a cod see a barrier, what they do is they tend to swim up and away from it. So this led us to design the Murphy's web trawl. And so what this does, and I'll show a picture of it in a second, is it includes a barrier that cod can see and avoid being captured. Cool thing about this is that we actually, if you make it out of blue twine, cod have been known to see blue clearer. So what it actually means is that the cod see the blue net coming at them before they would see another color. And it allows them, it kind of uses it as a ramp, like, oh, here it is. It's kind of like a runway. Like, here's a runway, go up and over, don't go in. And that had about a 40% reduction in cod catch while it retains the same amount of flounders. Because the flounders aren't using it as a ramp. They go up and they're like, no, we're going to just go back down. And so here is what the Murphy's web trawl looks like. And so this is out fishing. So you're on the wing of the net, and here is the web, which looks like a ramp coming up. And so you have your ground gear here, or your sweep, and then your head rope up here with floats on it to keep it up higher. And so what will happen is the cod comes swimming through, they see that, and they use it as a ramp to go up and over. And so this is just another angle of it. So you're right behind the head rope, and this is just looking at how the web kind of design operates. So you can see we went over a couple scallops. Oh, there's a flounder just flapping around down on the bottom there that ends up going into the net. So this is just one way, and we like to put a lot of cameras on things so we see how it's working down there as well. But it gets dark, and so a lot of times you have to go test it out in a little shallower water so you can get some light. So we have the U-Lot, we have the Murphy's web. What happens when we put the two of them together? So one of our latest experiments was to combine the U-Lot with the web design. So you have an ultra low opening trawl with the web in front of it. We're thinking, oh, one catches 40% less and the other catches 45% less. Let's just combine it and see what it does. Fortunately, that's not how it actually worked out. And what we found was that the web design was actually pulling up the U-Lot a little bit more, and we were missing some of those flounders, which means that it wouldn't really work for fishermen. We did modify the net further, and we were able to catch the same amount of flounders as the unmodified trawl, and that was by, we actually created a little bit of bungee, so there was more play in it, and so it wasn't always lifting it up. And then I just want to show you what collecting data at sea looks like. So this is me and another researcher on one of our vessels, and let's see. What we're doing is we're actually going to be measuring all of these fish that come up. So when we're testing gear, we want to know what's swimming in the net, and we want to get as much data as we can from those different animals. And so we have a tote full of flounders. I believe these are American place flounders, and we're getting measurements of all of them that come up from the 12 trips that we did for this research project. I think I measured over 17,000 fish. So I get really good at counting fish and measuring them. And you can see in the baskets down over here, here we have some flounders, and then here we have a monkfish, which is really gnarly looking fish. If you want to look up a picture of it, it's pretty cool. It's also tasty. So if you ever see it in your grocery store, go ahead and get it. I highly suggest it. And what I'm actually doing is I'm measuring them and I'm putting them in different totes because I know the different measurements for if they're legal fish to keep or if they are illegal and we have to throw them back after. There's a lot of different size thresholds that fishermen have to adhere to. So I'm separating that catch out by if they're small, I put them in the green tote, and if they're the right size or if they're large enough, I put them in the orange tote. So that's kind of what a day at work would look to like to me if I'm out in the field working with fishermen. And that is it. Does anybody have any questions? And to answer the one in there, does it damage the sea floor? A lot of these, especially bottom trawls, are going over mud, and it does kind of scour it a little bit, but mud has kind of a really good resiliency and it bounces back. I think trawlers get a kind of a bad rap for destroying habitat, and that's not really the case. It's also not just like scoop everything up. As I've gone through kind of in this talk, you can modify it a lot of different ways to catch what you want to. And fishermen have done really well over the years of doing that on their own.
So go ahead and toss any questions you have for Aaron right there in the chat and we'll see how many we can answer. Oh, there's another. Go ahead, Aaron.
The largest fish caught in a net. So this would be accidental, but probably a basking shark has been the largest one I've ever seen. And this basking shark was on the wrong place at the wrong time. And I mean, I've seen one come up and it's thrashing away, and so you just cut it free and let it go on with its life. Um, that's probably the biggest fish I've ever caught, but I've never really gotten the whole thing on board because it takes up the whole entire deck. I'm talking like 30 foot animal. Um, so the biggest fish I've ever caught that we've been able to keep would probably be a halibut. Do nets ever entangle whales? The bottom ones don't really interact with whales very often. There is, if you're looking at fixed gear and gill nets, you do have lines in the water, but there are probably there is a risk of entanglement, but there's not a lot of gill nets out there, so it's not as high of a risk. My favorite fish, um, my favorite fish. I'll give you a favorite fish to catch and then favorite fish to eat. Um, my favorite fish to catch, and one that I think is just really cool, is a wolffish. And what this is, it's a little eel-like, but it kind of has a massive jaw that has the crushing power is intense. You never want to put your hand near it. What they do is they swim around and they eat scallops and lobsters and anything that has a hard shell, and they just chomp it. So it's a really cool fish. It's one of my favorite. I was lucky enough to have one before there was a ban on keeping them, so they are actually really delicious because all they eat is scallops and lobsters. So, but you can't keep them. You can't keep them anymore. So it's a little unfortunate, but that's okay. And then favorite fish to eat. I really enjoy tuna. Um, I enjoy swordfish. I enjoy eating pretty much anything. Um, those are kind of the top ones. I really love pollock to go in like a fish and chips. Um, and I would recommend that. Largest boat I've ever fished on. Um, I was on a boat that was 120 feet that we were fishing on, and we were fishing for Atlantic herring. And then the most surprising thing, um, I think we caught a an unarmed missile once that got pulled up. That was we were really kind of surprised on that. It took us, we're like, oh no, like hopefully this is okay. So It is. We were safe. I'm still here, and the boats that it came up on is still there. But yeah, it's one of those things that you're like, oh, geez. Um, let's see, what else do we have? How old was I when I started researching fish? Um, well, I mean, I started researching fish just by fishing as a kid. I used to play in tide pools all the time. So I think officially, not until really college. Unofficially, I've been researching fish and ocean and life my whole entire life. I've always been curious. I've always wanted to do that, and I think that qualifies as research. Um, you're always being curious, and if you're always looking to understand something, you're researching. You're researching. That's it. Um, have your nets ever caught much junk on the bottom? Nah, not really. Um, I mean, I've seen some stuff come up, but not too many. Have ever fallen overboard? I have not fallen overboard. Luckily, that's never happened to me. I wouldn't advise it, obviously, but we do follow pretty strict rules to be safe on vessels when we're on it. We go through trainings to survive at sea. I know how to put a survival at sea suit on. I know how to deploy a life raft. I know how to, and I've gone through all of those trainings, so I'm prepared in case it does happen. I take regular CPR, first aid, all of those things so that I can help out if there is a crisis. Caught or found any other type of military equipment? Not off the top of my head. That was the one that really kind of stuck out. And how far out from shore did I go? I've gone probably 200 miles offshore, um, right up to like the Hague line out on George's Bank. I've gone all way out there. I've gone on fishing trips that have lasted, oh, 15, 16 days at a time. Um, Fishing location. Um, Selfishly, my favorite fishing location is close to home. I like to be home at night. I like to have spend time with my family. I'd rather not go out and fish multiple days at a time. But favorite fishing location right now, I'd love just fishing in Casco Bay, doing the surveys that I do here. But other than that, Stellwagen Bank, Middle Bank, those are really fun spots. Jeffrey's Ledge, it's great. Um, Platts, those are fun. Anywhere that has a lot of fish for me to catch. How late at night have I ever fished? So I took part in a fishery that was a purse seiner where you fish at night only. So what you do is you go out there, and what a purse seine is you have it's like you have a big boat and then you have a little boat on the back of it, or at least the bigger ones do. And then what you do is you set the net out and you use the little boat to help set it out into a big circle, and then you pull it tight and it's like a purse. And so that purse strings, once they get tight, it keeps all the fish on there, and you do it at night because those fish are off bottom. So you're taking advantage of the fish behavior by the time of day that you're actually fishing. Have I ever caught squid? Yes, I have. I love squid. Um, Calamari is one of my favorites. So whenever we catch them, I'm very happy. Uh, Favorite type of research to do on the boat in the lab. I like a mix. I do a lot of stuff on the boat in the summertime, and then when the wintertime, when the weather's not as good, I spend a lot more time in the lab. Um, and in the lab, I do a lot of different things from getting ready for the next season to I do a lot of molecular biology work to look. We catch water samples that have fish DNA in it, and so then we figure out what the fish were doing based on that water sample. Um, yeah, so there's a lot of different things, a lot of different things I can do, but right, I like a mix of on the boat and in the lab. I don't think I could do either on its own, and be as happy. So, and then have you ever fished over near a shipwreck? Uh, Probably at a safe distance away from it. Um, a lot of times shipwrecks will actually uh, bring a lot of fish to it. So when a ship wrecks, it provides structure to a bottom, which actually allows a lot of fish. It's a kind of a congregating device. So a lot of fish seem to hang out in that area. So there's actually programs where you can sink ships to make artificial reef systems down south, and that's basically to provide more habitat for fish. I have been out in the storm. Let's see, probably 12-foot waves is the most that I've seen at a time. Um, I wouldn't recommend it, but a lot of times the ocean can be an unforgiving place. So just you want to make sure that you're being safe while you're out there. Have I ever seen sea mammals? Yeah, I've seen tons of marine mammals. See seals all over the time, all the time. See harbor porpoises in Casco Bay constantly. Um, Go out. I've gone out and seen dolphins, white-sided dolphins, common dolphins, multiple whale species. Yeah, I see a lot of cool marine life. Largest fish I've ever caught on a rod. Mm, I haven't been able to go tuna fishing yet, but I want to. Um, Probably a really large cod, like a 30 pounder. Um, but that's about it for rod and reel fishing. Um, yeah, if I get the chance to, I'll go out and I'll catch that. Has it will ever jump near me? Hmm. No, um, not really. We've always stayed pretty far, like far enough away from the whales. We don't really get real up and close to them. But I mean, it'd be cool. It'd be cool to see, but I haven't. Do I ever work outside of Maine, the U.S.? Yes. Yeah, I work outside of Maine quite a bit. We partner with a lot of different institutions. We partner with Canadian institutions as well, so we do work outside of the U.S. Because it's really important to kind of understand that the ocean is an ecosystem. It's not necessarily owned by countries. So there's a lot of fish that move in and out of different areas, and you have to be able to work with other countries that the fish are swimming in and out of. The fish don't necessarily care about our politics, so you have to be willing to work with everybody. Um, so I haven't seen any aircraft carriers out while I'm out fishing. Um, and then do politics affect your work? That's kind of uh, I think politics, I mean, affect everybody's work. So I don't think we're alone in that. Um, yeah. So we try not to affect like we try to do work regardless of politics. We want to try to do best for the ecosystem, no matter what.
All right, we probably got time for a couple more questions and then, so does anyone have any final questions for Aaron?
Trying to look and see if I've missed any. I think I was getting pretty much all of them.
We got one more in the chat. What ocean pollution do you find is most harmful to ocean life?
Um, I think trash in general is harmful to ocean life, whether it's I see a lot of balloons, unfortunately. Um, it's been usually whenever I see a balloon, I pick it up. I mean, it's always popped, but yeah. Have you ever seen a red tide? Not. I've seen the organisms through a microscope, but I've never seen like red in the water like that. But I have seen I've seen dinoflagellates. It's been a long time since I had that class, so uh, but I have seen them and been able to ID them. But I don't work with harmful algal blooms. Um, but no, I haven't seen red tide, but I know what it is, and I know it can definitely be harmful.
We got another about wave height.
Wave biggest. Yeah, I think about 12 feet for the biggest wave that I've been out in. I don't know. Um, and that's just because you kind of get stuck out there and the weather changes quickly. It's never an intention to go out fishing in that. But there's definitely I've been rocked around quite a bit. Um, you learn to get an iron stomach eventually. What kind of student might enjoy this type of work? I think anybody that likes to be outdoors, anybody that likes to be fishing, anybody who's naturally inquisitive, um, any student could do this work. Um, yeah, it's just about enjoying it. So if you enjoy the ocean, you enjoy looking at fish and looking at organisms in the water, go for it, pursue it.
So on that note, oh, the rarest fish. Last question sliding in there. What is the rarest fish you've ever caught?
Mm, probably, I've caught sturgeon before. They're not super rare, but kind of stand out in my head.
I'm still stuck on the basking shark. I can't believe you caught a basking shark in your net.
Yeah.
That's cool. All right. Cool. Well, thank you so much, Aaron. For my schools that are attending, I'm going to stop the recording and then you'll be able to unmute yourselves and give Aaron a round of applause. So thank you very much.